Hey there, I'm Meredith, and I am an intuitive and an astrologer based out of the mountains of North Carolina. And today I'm going to continue on with my IC series that I am doing because I think that it's a very interesting time. I think it's that there's a lot that's about to shift within the world, and I feel that there's no better time to do your own personal internal work and processing. And so I wanted to continue that during this Cancer season. And the sign that I'm on right now is Gemini. So this is if your IC or your first or fourth house, is in the sign of Gemini. And then also if your moon is in Gemini, and if you have Mercury in any sign in your fourth house. So one of the things that this brings up is like busy, always multitasking. If you meet people and they have a Gemini IC or a Gemini moon, they're going to have like this project going and this thing going on and this going on. So they'll have like their tablet, they'll have a book, they'll have the TV on, they'll have this, they'll have this, they'll have this. And that's how they're typically going to be within their home space, within the space that they feel comfortable. So what that can translate into is somewhat of a challenge in being idle. I think that, and I struggle with this. I mean, my IC is Aries, though I have Pisces in my fourth house. So sometimes when it comes to fire signs on the IC or air signs, you can run into difficulties with being idle and just relaxing, just kicking your feet up and just, just chilling, just enjoying. And I do find that this shows up for me. So no judgment, but I think that it's normal, it's human, it's healthy to have like a break every now and again, and it's kind of like how like hustle or like achievement culture has like settled into ourselves, though I really feel like with everything we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That personally, I believe that humans function better when we have goals and things going on and things to do that are like meaningful and purposeful. We're like, when we're given that opportunity, we tend to do well with that. We tend to thrive. So, yeah. And then also what you can see, so Gemini is the poles, basically, like the two poles or the opposing sides. And so one thing that I've found with a lot of my clients who have Gemini moon or Gemini IC, Gemini fourth house specifically, this doesn't really apply as much to Mercury in the fourth house, unless it does, and then please tell me. But I guess it depends on the sign that Mercury is in, right? So if you have Gemini moon IC or fourth house, you tend to have polarizing parents where, one example is that the mom is extremely strict and that, the dad is like extremely relaxed. Or, I have one client whose mom is a hippie, like, totally was like a free spirit, like an idealist. And dad was military, and they just happened to fall in love, have a great relationship, but it just means that like the way that they show up in their parenting styles are extremely different. So yeah, and then also what can tend to happen is the mind and emotions, which we know in psychology at this point in time, like we know that those are linked, like the mind, the body, the emotions, those are all like one big whole picture. But what we can find is that there's like an emotion. So you can think about this if you have like the moon and Mercury together as well. There's like this emotion, thought, wheel, loop, and it's like, and like when you get really on to thinking about something and feeling about something, and you're like thinking your feelings and feeling your thoughts, and that can become very, very intense. And I find that either you can go into a grounding energy as a therapeutic remedy, or you can go into like a spiritual upward energy. And oftentimes both helps to remedy that, or you can remedy that by also going into your heart. There's like I believe it was Rudolf Steiner that said that the heart space, the space at the very center of your being, is like where it's like the only space that is not really corrupted or isn't really touched by the forces of this world. And so I feel that that's very pertinent and potent information, and just kind of combine those two words. But yeah, I feel that like if you were to, kind of like think about like resting your attention at your heart, or also above your head, or beneath your feet, that might be a way to take yourself out of the thinking feeling, because that can be like something that people with these placements can really get into. And so as far as the body, this is where, let's see. Okay, so the other thing that I want to say before I get into the body is there's internalized ancestral anxiousness, restlessness, nervousness, like a frenetic energy, which can also contribute to the inability to be idle, the inability to relax, right? And so when you do kind of like get yourself somewhat-ish settled, like when you are able to like settle your energies and kind of rest in the center of those two extreme opposing poles, what you're able to do is like you're able to actually manifest very quickly with your thinking, and you're able to really like project thoughts that like very quickly are able to come back. It actually can take on a very hermetic form. I don't know if anybody knows, but Mercury is actually, which is the ruler of Gemini, is connected to Hermes, is the only, being that can really go from like heaven to hell, to heaven to hell, without like becoming, without, just totally unscathed, and can relate to everything everywhere kind of thing, and very much acts within accordance to and understands like universal law. So that's like a very big potential of this energy. And I think that as far as the body, right, when we think of like of Gemini, we think of what doubles off. So we start at the head with Aries, and then we move to the mouth and the throat and the esophagus for Taurus. And then, the body begins to double off. So we have shoulders, arms, hands, like lungs, right? These are like the twins. They're like, or the lovers, depending on how you're viewing it. Like there's, so you can find a lot of weight on your shoulders, so to speak, depending on what you have going on in the rest of your chart. And one of the most significant holding patterns, and this is definitely ancestral, this is something that you can find in your mother if this is something that you do, is holding your breath in times of stress. Oh my gosh. I mean, even just like the level of like conditions in the body, want to say, when we hold our breath, like we can cause ourselves serious GI distress, which is also sort of a mercurial problem. The GI tract and the intestinal tract is actually ruled by Virgo. So, we can cause ourselves like a lot of distress. We can cut off the air to our brain, which is, Gemini is very mental, to our tissues, right? And so we really have to focus on breathing very deeply. Like most Americans, by the way, if you are in America, then this is directed at you. Most Americans do not breathe correctly. where like, all right, so say, you tell most Americans, take a deep breath, right? And they go, and they like totally puff up their chest. They're not breathing down into their like, pelvic chambers, into their low belly. They're just kind of like keeping their breath up in like the chest. And, when you breathe in, ideally, you would kind of like drink the air into your nostrils, and it like expands your pelvis, expands your low belly. And most people don't breathe like this with modern culture and modern stressors, right? But you breathe in and your lower belly expands and actually relaxes, right? And then you breathe out and your low belly and your whole cavity basically just like should not relax, but should sort of like constrict together. So you breathe in and it's like, your shoulders shouldn't go anywhere really, because you're breathing down into your pelvis area, which gets into the realm of like Libra, Scorpio, right? And so I just wanted to share that because Gemini does rule the respiratory system. When somebody carries that like very modern anxiety that like comes from having too much to do and and like that stress energy, you notice that you sort of like you hold your breath, and then that can create all kinds of other holding patterns within the body. So it's super important, especially if you have a Gemini moon, which is prone to like asthma and respiratory distress, right? It's super important to try anyway to breathe down into the lowest part of your belly. Just trust me, I think that it can be and to take time every day if you are dealing with something like that, to just breathe and just to focus on that. Because I think and for every sign, for every single person, taking the time to focus a little bit more on breath is a really great thing and can be very useful. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you. Let me know if this is your IC or moon in the comments. All right. Bye.